Hi everybody, welcome to Entrepreneurs in Small Rooms Drinking Coffee, where we talk candidly with early stage to mid-stage entrepreneurs about the details of starting a tech company. I'm your host, Rob Kennedy, and today we've got Jacob from Cumulonimbus. Hi there. And we're being hosted by the lovely folks at the working group. Hi, Jacob, as he takes a sip of his coffee.
Well, thank you so much for the coffee and for having me.
No problem. So do you want to talk about Cumulonimbus and PressureNet in particular?
Certainly. So this project does crowdsourced weather data through smartphone sensors. So it's actually a really new kind of project and is born out of a frustration for a lack of a high accuracy weather forecast. So that's what we're working on. The project started probably 3 years ago with the introduction of the Motorola Zoom and the first barometer. But actually my interest in the space in producing a better weather forecast goes back probably 3 or 4 or 5 years even. I was living in Montreal, living with atmospheric science students, going to undergrad. I was a computer science student myself. And I was writing weather software, doing radar post-processing, trying to get a better forecast out of McGill radar imagery from McGill University. But there's only so much you can do there without inputting new data to the system. So other groups kind of did that better than me. There's some really famous apps that do that. You might have heard of SkyMotion or Dark Sky. These are apps that do radar post-processing and similar techniques to give you what they call a nowcast. So when they announced that, I kind of let them do that. They were better than me. And maybe that you could call it the first pivot before this was a business, but change ideas.
Right.
And pivot towards collecting this data through these sensors. So that's kind of how that project got started. My friend and co-founder Phil worked on this with me. He's a designer, and he helped us, make an app that really people would be interested in looking at and using.
So you said, hey, look, there's this data problem. The weather forecasts are okay, kind of not so great. And then at some point, a particular smartphone came along that made you say, now I kind of want to be more serious about this?
Yeah, so the problem with the weather forecasts actually is twofold. One problem is that they have a lack of input data. And the other problem is that they're just a simple model of the atmosphere. So if you take these two facts, you have a simplified physics model of the atmosphere that takes as input sparse data that doesn't really accurately describe the atmosphere. So then you output, obviously, kind of a poor quality forecast. It's too simple. So the particular device that changed that for me was the Motorola Zoom.
Which was an Android phone.
It's a tablet, actually.
An Android tablet.
Yeah.
Oh, the XOOM.
XOOM. Well, marketing problems there. Anyway, that device never sold very well in terms of absolute numbers, but it really changed the ecosystem for me. It was the first Android device I ever bought. And this idea that it carries a sensor to measure the atmosphere is so exciting that I thought, okay, well, if we use that data, somehow we can make a better weather forecast.
But that's not why they put it in there. They weren't like, hey, Jacob, we want to make you to do weather software. It was in there for a different reason.
That's correct. It was in there for GPS, actually. So right now, or before the Motorola Zoom, rather, GPS, you would need, I think, 4 satellites, and there's a lot of fairly complicated math to actually get a good latitude, longitude lock. But you can speed that up a lot by adding estimates. So the original estimate was, cell tower triangulation. Let's try and figure out about what user is, and that speeds GPS up. And then the next one is altitude measurements. If you can estimate your altitude, you can get an even faster GPS lock. So that's why they put the barometer in there initially, was that it actually is very sensitive to altitude and gives them a competitive advantage in measuring that.
Interesting, in a tablet. All places you can see a phone, but there you go.
Yeah.
So, I think a lot of people, when they start companies, they're like, technology, there's this magical technology, maybe it can solve a problem. It sounds like you already had a problem in mind.
I did have a problem.
That this technology came along to help solve.
Correct. So the problem that I have in particular, personally, that I have a drive to solve, is thunderstorm forecasts. So if I want to know if it's going to thunderstorm, say tomorrow, nobody can really tell me. The best they would do is say 50% chance or something like that.
Right.
That's unacceptable. I want to know 2 in the afternoon, yes or no.
Right.
So that's that problem, actually, I have that problem, but that represents a very large problem for all of humanity. I mean, if you can predict that kind of thing, you can do better crop outputs on your farm. can do better in solar power efficiency by knowing how cloudy it will be or how sunny it will be, things like that. So that's sort of the larger scale problem. Now, this wasn't a business in the beginning, I should say. It was just a hobby. I was working, I was hacking, making software. It became clear that it was going to be a business, and that's when we kind of ramped up and decided, okay, we really need to focus on this.
So you guys had jobs, and you were doing this on the side. And what was the catalyst that made you say, I'm gonna quit my job and focus on this?
Actually, there was a series of 2 events that happened. I had 2 jobs to quit.
Right.
So, the first event actually is that I got a job interview at a different company, which was actually SpaceX. So,
Wait a minute.
yeah.
Elon Musk.
Elon Musk's SpaceX. So, I've been applying there for many years. They didn't want me at first, fresh out of school, not good enough to build spaceships. But eventually I got an interview and they flew me down to California, and that was a grueling interview. So I came back to Montreal after that and sat down to do my day job, which was writing Java code to do HR visualization for SAP data. And that was a very valuable job, but after the spaceship thing,
Not a passion project.
I couldn't do it. So I left that, but this project, PressureNet, wasn't ready yet for me to work full time. So I got a job in the airline industry, actually, closer to spaceships, one step closer. And I did that for a little while before this project got really good, and that's when we started giving data to researchers.
Okay.
So there's a particular atmospheric science researcher called Cliff Mass, and he takes our data and he runs it through experiments and weather models, and he's well known in the industry. He runs a good blog and does a lot of leading science research on that topic. So he made a big fuss in the media when we started giving him this data.
Did you find him and say, hey, dude?
He found us, actually. He found us.
So how could we posting on a blog and like, look, data, XML?
Kind of, yeah. We were trying to be pretty visible on the internet, but also he was really looking for this data. I believe before he found us, he had tasked an undergrad class to actually go build an Android app to collect the data.
Interesting.
So he really wanted this data.
Yeah.
And when he found it, we were generating a fair bit of it. He said, hi.
So backing up one step, two quick questions. Your co-founder and you met in school. Is that how you guys, okay. And then your kind of how you parsed up your roles, at least at the time, was what you were both developers and just developed together?
Well, so he's a designer. So we actually built a series of Android apps together. And we didn't really know which one was going to be the big hit. And in fact, I think they would all be big hits if we paid attention to them. So one of them we built is called DoodleCam. And I would give you a demo. It's kind of fun. It's a camera app.
Okay.
You take a photo outside, and I have an algorithm that looks for the difference between the sky and the ground, and then it inserts a monster on the horizon, like live into the photo. So that's pretty neat. Phil and I did a bunch of projects like that.
Right.
PressureNet being one of those projects.
Yes. And then when you did PressureNet, what I find interesting is that so to generate the data that got his interest, that required a bunch of people to install the app.
Right.
And one of the problems that people, in this universe, maybe a few years ago it was different, but nowadays, just putting out an app isn't sufficient. You need to market it to get people to use it. So how did you get from I have an app to getting enough data that you can be meaningful?
This is a really good question. Before I answer that, I want to talk about a sense of scale.
Okay.
So existing weather networks, we have to be denser and better than them, or this project's no good. So the sense of scale there, they have somewhere, say, 50,000 nodes or 100,000 at max reporting them data. So we need more than that to be even close to useful. And right now we have 300,000 nodes in the network. So the way we got there, we actually did no real marketing in the beginning. My favorite marketing is really just posting to people on the internet, just saying hi and telling them what we're doing, which is
like via Twitter or
Twitter, Reddit, Facebook, Hacker News. My favorite actually are the Android forums, XDA developers, Motorola, Zoomforums.com. These really niche, that one back in the day.
Yeah.
These really niche communities, and then it really spreads by word of mouth from there. When you just tell somebody that what you're working on, what happens is, especially with this project, where we say, so the value prop to users downloading PressureNet is, hey, you have a phone that can contribute to your weather forecast. Do you want a better forecast? If you download this app, I'll give you one later. So people download the app. Now that actually We only have 20,000 active users right now. We didn't scale that to 300,000. We have a different strategy to get all the data that we need to actually beat the existing weather systems.
Yes.
That strategy is actually making partnerships with other weather companies. So other Android apps that have popularity, we work with them to collect data in tandem.
Do you pay them, or is there some?
That's a potential in the future. We don't pay them at the moment.
Why do they do it then?
That's why we look for weather apps, actually. We are pitching to them a better weather forecast for their app. So if they give us data now, we're going to work on the problem, which is cleaning the data, incorporating it into weather models, and producing a forecast. And then maybe we'll give them back that forecast. Now, that's a bit of a risky proposition on their side. What if my startup fails and we don't ever provide them a forecast?
Right.
The second level is that it's absolutely just already very valuable. That data has been used in producing higher accuracy weather models than we've ever had before. So it's a really good project at the moment for them.
That's cool. So for those just tuning in, this is Entrepreneurs in Small Rooms Drinking Coffee. I'm Kennedy, and we're talking with Jacob of PressureNet. So Jacob, so the customers of you're getting people using your app directly, you're getting people using indirectly the technology, so you get more data points. Those kinds of apps, you said that you're using the barometer in the Android device.
Yes.
And the barometer senses, this is just a nerdy outtake for a second, the barometer senses pressure. How do you get weather out of that?
Yes, great question. Well, so the long-standing base knowledge point is that falling pressure indicates poor weather coming, and rising pressure indicates better weather coming.
Right.
So some of our users today use it like that, and there's also a neat correlation maybe with migraine headaches and other things that have effects with pressure. But the modern answer to the question is actually that building a dense network of pressure sensors describes to us not just what the atmosphere is like on the surface, but what it's like way up in the higher atmosphere. So the pressure, what that really means is it's the weight of the column of air above you. So if you measure the weight of the column of air above a phone, and then another one, and then another one right next to each other, you get this dense picture of what the atmosphere is like. So that's only one metric of what the atmosphere is like, right? There's all kinds of other metrics.
Sure.
So what we do to get the weather out of that is we take the data and feed it into these models, weather model.
Your own weather model?
Well, not our own.
Okay.
Maybe our own eventually.
Right.
Right now, what we're working on is called WRF, WRF, which is the Weather Research and Forecast Model. It was built by the American government in large collaboration for the last 10 or 20 years. And it takes all kinds of inputs as data, and then they run it on supercomputers and they output a weather forecast.
Yes.
So that's an open source thing. We're using WRF in relationship with some of our partners to test how accurate our data can be, and how,
Yeah, okay, I think I get it. So the barometer, now what's interesting is, the iPhone, at the time of recording of this broadcast, tomorrow the iPhone 6 is coming out.
That's right.
And so up till now, barometers only existed in most Android devices, or most modern Android devices?
Most modern Android devices.
So now,
yes.
Last week, Apple's like, oh, by the way, it's got a barometer.
Yep.
Did your team go yay? Did you freak out? Did you throw up? What happened?
It's good and it's bad. I've been waiting for this event for years.
Okay.
I've known it's been coming. I don't know when.
Right.
But I'm happy it's here. Genuinely happy.
Are you guys an Android shop?
We're an Android shop.
So
we are building an iPhone app, though.
Okay.
That is new. We have actually, so PressureNet, I should specify.
Yes.
PressureNet app on Android, it's kind of a geeky, nerdy app. It shows you charts of atmospheric pressure. It's, not really meant for your average consumer of basic weather info.
Right.
So we're building a series of apps, cross-platform, should be Android and iOS, that are going to be nice weather apps, the good weather apps to do this collection. And we're actually going to work on those apps to focus on our current conditions feedback loop.
Right.
Which is where we don't tell you what the weather's like, you tell us. And then that cascades around your neighbors and your friends. So actually, the idea behind our new iPhone app that's going to use the barometer, we're going to have a higher density of weather alerts and notifications that we can correlate to pressure changes.
Yes.
So we're going to be looking at both sets of data, sunny, cloudy, rainy, and pressure rising and pressure falling.
Right.
Now, the unfortunate and scary thing about the iPhone having a barometer this week is that that really is an indicator of main mainstream. So maybe the Galaxy S5 had one, and the Nexus 4 had one, etc. But those are not mainstream, or not considered mainstream. So with the iPhone, now I wonder, will there be more competition?
Exactly.
Are other startups about to have this idea and enter the space? I think so.
So you've got a head start. The question is now you guys have to keep it up. An app directly as a business model. I mean, as you said, it targets a very specific niche of people. It seems to me that your value proposition might be in something that plugs into other apps. It's not directly making a consumer app.
That's actually quite true. The only reason we would make a consumer app is because it's part of our DNA. It's what we've been trying to do for 5 years, to make the best weather app. So you know what, we're going to do it. The actual strategy to grow the data, though, is with the SDK. So what we build is the PressureNet SDK. That's the core thing that we build. That's an open source piece of software. It's MIT licensed. Anybody can take it. It's free to use. And what it does, right now it's only on Android, but we're building the iPhone one too. It does all the sensor data collection, transmission, security, location, all that kind of stuff. So it's a simple Android library project. You can basically drag and drop it into your Android app, and then add a couple of lines of Java, and then it goes off and it just runs in the background. And periodically, every 10 minutes or every hour, it'll collect the data and send it off. So that's kind of the focus of where our development efforts go at the moment. Although with the iPhone, we don't have that SDK built. So we also can't just build an SDK. We have to build an app to use it.
And that's actually interesting about the SDK, because usually when you're building an SDK, you now are going after developers. Right. So I think we were talking before, and you said that your business model, you quit because you quit your job. You're like, this seems to be a thing. And I think we said before that one quick way to make some money to pay your lunch money is to sell the data.
Correct.
Just to existing weather companies just help improve their forecast. So you did that, and then you realized that was not big enough of a. That's not a
startup. That's not going to be the end goal, right?
So you ultimately joined an accelerator, Mars, the Jolt accelerator. Take me from I quit my job, I'm trying this for a while, to shoot, I need to go to an accelerator. Why did you do that?
So the timeline here is that the beginning of last summer was the realization of the company that building one app is not sufficient. We must be a platform, we must build the SDK. So I spent last summer writing the SDK. And we were getting ready to launch, but we were also running out of money. So that takes us to sort of the middle of last summer, where we applied to a bunch of accelerators in Toronto. So I was living in Montreal.
Just Toronto?
Well, just Toronto. I should set the stage here. I was living in Montreal at the time. I had done my undergrad there and I was still living there. The rest of my team was in Toronto. They're Canadian citizens. I'm dual American Canadian.
And you were paying them how?
At the moment, I was not paying them.
It's a passion project for them too.
Passion project for them too. The project is really, really, really neat. So people love to work on it, even if they don't get paid.
No, not even equity?
They do get equity, yes. So my co-founder Phil and I have equal equity, for example.
And you carved out a bunch and said, dear developers, designers,
correct.
Helping us, here's a bit of equity.
So our CTO, I should mention, is Jared. He works full-time at Mozilla. He's on the geolocation services team there. Somewhat convenient. And he works part-time on this project. He owns equity in the company too. And I have a couple of other developers working for equity, but mostly it's unpaid at the moment. And so to jump ahead, I'm the only one on salary at the moment, although there are a couple of full-time people.
And the rest of your team is part-time?
And everybody else.
And they have their paycheck is from somewhere else?
That's correct.
Is it hard to get them to focus on, anytime I've ever done any kind of startup thing that's not full-time, has been tricky. I mean, I know developers never sleep and work their asses off, so maybe, and they, that might be part of it.
Well, everybody on the team is very busy, either juggling multiple jobs, or if it's just this one, they're busy on this one. So, focus, but on the other hand, everybody has passion. Everybody who works on this is excited to work on it and likes it. So I think that's kind of the key driver that we have as a success there.
So I interrupted you. You're running out of funds. You've got people working on a passion project, but you're like, dude, this needs to be. I'm building an SDK. I need to do something.
Well, so the other element here is that I'm a first-time entrepreneur. I have not done this before. So the part of the draw to the accelerator was not just the funds. Frankly, we could have survived a little bit longer without the funding. A huge part of the bonus there for us was actually the business guidance and advice and connections and really sinking us deep into the ecosystem of what it means to be a successful startup in the modern day.
Yes.
Because we were taking this over a period of 6 months from just a hobby to, oh, this is the next big thing. And that transition was really, finding an accelerator was a very important part of that.
Okay.
In order to help guide us along. So yeah.
So actually just looking at the time, so just so everyone knows, you're listening to Entrepreneurs in Small Rooms Drinking Coffee. I'm Rob Kennedy and we're talking with Jacob of PressureNet. And we are almost cut up to the present day, almost. So you looked at a bunch of accelerators, you picked Jolt and Mars.
That's right.
And so 2 quick questions. What do they give and take from you for the if you're willing to talk about
Absolutely. Well, so the cash is $50,000 and the equity that they have in exchange for that is 90%.
Okay.
Now, that's actually a very simplistic look on the deal. They offer significantly more than that, more than money.
Right,
So
that is the value
and that's the value of the accelerator in the first place.
It's not
Yep.
just cash, it's
Exactly. So, there's market services and there's all kinds of advisory roles and really, really helpful people.
And why did you choose them as opposed to anyone else, assuming you got into someone,
We did.
at least one of them?
We did. We chose Mars for actually the best fit.
Yeah.
So the best fit being, in our opinion, science. So at our core, we're really a science startup.
Yes.
In order to succeed, we have to really escalate the amount of science that is done in this particular area as compared to outside. So we felt that Mars was actually a really good ecosystem for that, and that turned out to be very true.
Yeah.
Sometimes, so we work in the Commons, Mars Commons. There are professors of atmospheric physics from U of T that work in there sometimes, and that's one of the most powerful connections that we've had.
Are they like walking by and they have a sign on their shirt that says
Almost,
That's kind of random. It's like, you, come join my startup.
Yeah.
That's really cool. So you went to the accelerator, and when was this, by the way?
September last year.
September last year.
When we started.
And the cohort's like usually, 3 months long?
This is a 6-month cohort
6 month
actually.
cohort.
Jolt started as 3 months, I think, a few years ago. They do 6 months now.
Okay.
So yeah, we did a lot in that 6 months actually. It was really, really fantastic. Of course, that ended somewhat officially with the Launch Festival earlier this year in California. So we flew down there. Cool. That was kind of the end of the program.
Right.
It was really good, although the only problem is that we don't currently have the next round of funding.
So yeah, so you went through, so what did you do during the accelerator? We don't have to dwell on it, just you got 50K. I think you said to me before you used it to eat.
Yes.
You paid yourselves.
We paid founder salaries, server fees, and laptops, basic equipment.
And Mars was cool with like letting you use money to eat as opposed to hiring social media, whatever.
Right, so we also did that too.
Yeah.
We did a little bit of the hiring in social media. We brought in a social media coordinator for a bit, which actually really changed our entire internet presence. We were pretty bad at it before, and she was pretty good at it, so that helped a lot.
I saw at the bottom of your site you have like every single social media icon that exists. I don't think you have Pinterest, but I could be wrong.
We have a Pinterest account. I don't know if it's listed there.
That's okay.
Yeah. So we did all kinds of actually product development was something that tried to get us to stop.
Really?
Yeah. Well, and not stop completely, but refocus more on the other sides of the business.
Yes.
Customer discovery and the rest of the startup world that is not just built and built.
So don't just build, find out who will buy this up. So what was the outcome? What did you learn from it?
Well, we really
Aside from running through the
solidified
cash to get your presence solidified.
It really became clear to us where our strengths and weaknesses are and how to actually focus. So I shouldn't say that we focus, it's still a struggle. But the thing that we really got out of it was we knew now which specific actions to take in order to make this a successful startup. And we've now been working on those actions. Just to quickly say, for us, that's grow the data, clean the data, and sell it to enterprise customers.
So your original pitch, your business model was maybe selling the other businesses, but also not really sure. What did you think it was?
It was not really sure, or it was so far away that nobody could understand really what it was. So we went into, our pitch to Mars Jolt was, look at this PressureNet app we have, it's collecting data. We have a relationship with some scientists who think it's good. We are going to make the best weather forecast ever. And we kind of left a big gap.
Now we've got this, we can predict the future, now what?
Yeah, exactly. So it really helped us find those early potential customers and forge some of those relationships.
So that's really cool. So what's interesting is that if you ultimately are going to compete with the NOAA or Environment Canada or whomever, you need that huge data set, but you're potentially selling data to them right now.
Right.
Is that weird?
So it is a little bit weird.
Okay.
We're not selling data to anybody right now.
No.
As the first comment.
Okay.
We are providing a non-commercial license that is free to use. So that is a really excellent concern though, actually, because what we don't want to do is we don't want to cannibalize our secret sauce.
Yes. We aren't providing a secret, you're just providing the output.
That's true. So and that's actually where we talk about the cleaning of the data, because that's really the secret sauce. We don't want to sell the raw data. No, it would cost anybody who buys that is going to have to spend millions of their own dollars to clean it.
Right.
So we don't want to sell it, nobody wants to buy it.
Right.
I've learned that lesson.
Right.
What we do want to do is learn how to clean it really hyper efficiently and really, really densely in accuracy, and we want to resell that. Now, when we sell that, the primary reason we have to take that step. It is awkward, as you mentioned, but we have to take that step because otherwise we need a team of 1,000 atmosphere, people, scientists doing all the work to figure out exactly where everything goes. And I think it really, I'll remind you that I want the thunderstorm forecast.
Right.
So I think the best way to get that, and the best way to accelerate that is our business generating that forecast, is to make sure that we have these key partnerships. It also builds walls around us. For example, these larger companies, these larger weather companies, they could duplicate my work.
Right.
So I just want to be the biggest and the best at it.
Quickest.
The quickest.
So that's interesting. So your current state of the union is that you've burned through your accelerator cash. I think you told me that you're funding through friends and family at the moment, in the form of convertible notes, convertible debt, and the term is like a year, so you got to pay them back.
It's about 10 months now.
Yeah. And just for those who don't know, so what you do is I lend money and then I get an interest rate back, and that converts. If it doesn't convert, I get my money back, which almost never happens, I think. And then if you do, you get preferential treatment at the first round of funding. It's a way of punting the need to value your company before it's a valuable thing, but that's something that you can value objectively. So you're in that space right now, and then you're like, okay, I need some more money to build out the team.
So we're looking at, it's exactly right, we're looking to raise $750,000 for the next round. That would hire
also convertible debt.
That would hire 2 key people, an atmospheric science researcher that can work with us on our scale, our time scale, not academic science time scale, and maybe a machine learning expert so that we can do some really excellent analysis on cleaning our data. The rest of that funding will go to really growing everything, growing the data set and growing the amount that we can actually clean.
So you've got 2 current existential problems. One is, gosh, we need money to bring the team in place, to actually build the algorithms that prevent us from having, you guys from having to hire monkeys and data entry analysts and just like doing stuff. And then the second problem is, you think you've identified who your customer is, you think it's enterprise. It's a long play. If it is enterprise, there's 2 problems, it seems. One is finding your customer and getting somebody to buy stuff. That's a longer play. And the other is getting more data points, which requires making deals with apps and other people.
Well, eventually I would like that one to be inside Google and Apple, where just all data is collected at all times.
Right.
So that's
a longer term deal as well.
For the moment, what we would like to do is sell weather forecasts to agriculture, insurance, shipping, transportation companies. Those kinds of enterprise plays. But we're still probably a couple years away from that. So
that's okay.
From those really good sales, we'll do pilot projects with those customers within the year. But that requires the 750,000 raise
to sort of get to prove out. Okay, so then as we're getting close to the end of time, so if you're just tuning in, it's enterprise entrepreneurs in small rooms drinking coffee. I'm Rob Kennedy, and we're talking with Jacob of PressureNet. So So let's just quickly talk about your current
Yes.
existential crises,
Mhm.
aside from the money, which is always the thing. The first one is selling into the enterprise. So you're going to do pilots, if you can find people who are interested in different verticals. How do you, because cash, even if you do, when you get the money, you have to be concerned about burning through the cash very quickly.
Right.
So what metrics are you going to use to determine whether these experiments are going well? Obviously, the companies have their own goals and needs.
Right.
How do you know you're barking up, agriculture is right, but, helicopters are wrong?
Right, so actually, that's a really, really, that's probably going to be what makes or breaks this business, is knowing how to do that very well.
Right.
An example of why that's going to be very difficult is that certain weather forecasts, when you improve the accuracy, that's worth a lot of money to a certain person. Other weather forecasts, it's not true at all. And finding those ones is kind of the answer to your question. So here's an example. So solar, and I'll pick two examples, solar power and agriculture. So on solar power, the actual problem is not so much is it cloudy or sunny, but how much snowfall is there in the winter? How long will that snow melt, and how reflective is that snow, and things like that. So knowing if we can provide a higher accuracy snowfall forecast to a solar company, that's valuable. That's worth a lot of money, and we want to make sure that we're chasing that, or it won't work. What I'm trying to say is we can't just take this large goal, build a better weather forecast for everybody.
Right.
We have to build little tiny better weather forecasts for these industries. So picking which one is mostly a matter of making sure that we're picking the most optimal ones.
Yes.
So the agriculture example, something like dew point or wind speed, have very big physical differences in reality as when you measure a small difference in the forecast overnight. So what I mean is wind speed over the crops when you're doing
seeding it or whatever.
Fertilizing and pesticides and stuff like that. If you don't do that at the right wind speed, then things are bad.
Wasted everything.
Exactly. So finding those very specific weather forecasts.
Got it.
And
so that seems relatively potentially longer, but it seems to make sense to find who's got a direct problem that you can solve most immediately.
Right.
And then the other question that I'm curious about is a lot of apps, a lot of businesses, when they have sort of a two-sided kind of thing, you're not really a marketplace or a two-sided thing, but you need to get customers who are the people who are paying for the weather data. But the other tricky part that a lot of even just app companies face, which you're not, but just straight app companies, is how do I get enough people to use my stuff to build that critical mass to then be able to feed it back to those guys? So is your plan to push your SDK to as many developers as you possibly can to bake their stuff in so that you have data?
That is the core plan, yes.
Yeah, and you're just going to, again, I know we talked about it before, but are you going to incentivize them? Or?
So the incentive absolutely is in profit sharing.
Okay.
As you mentioned, we don't pay them at the moment.
Yes.
Because we don't have the ability to do that. Yeah. But the idea certainly is that if we take this data, clean it, and then resell it, there will be a profit share back to the developers. Absolutely.
So it's like instead of advertising, just give us your website.
There's a whole business model just in there. And in fact, this is a conversation for another time, but building an SDK business model on scientific data collection instead of advertising for mobile app revenue generation is truly amazing.
It reminds me of the protein folding and all that.
Just like setting it home, folding at home.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Very similar concept. We just haven't articulated it like that to developers.
Yeah.
There's another way I can do this. I can make strategic partnerships with very large developers.
Right.
So I don't have to make 200 developer relationships, just a few.
Right.
So I'm working on those as well.
I see. So like people who have larger installed bases.
Sure. Well,
so
I can call a couple by name just because they're so big. Like the Weather Channel or AccuWeather.
Right.
And they have 100 million app installs. So that's.
And even though you plan on competing on them, you think they might.
Well, they might work with me at the moment.
Yeah.
We'll see.
That's cool.
It's tough to know.
That's cool. So I think we're kind of out of time. I could think we could talk about this for a lot longer. But so I think maybe in terms of your next steps, it's get that round of funding.
Yes.
Find like-minded developers who are willing to include your SDK.
Correct.
Quickly get the iPhone SDK out.
That's right. That's
so
we can. It won't be by tomorrow. It's funny. I just quickly, I've been hardline about that for about a year.
Yeah.
I've said to everybody, okay, the day the iPhone comes out, we're going to be ready, and it's tomorrow. Well, we'll be there soon.
Yeah, prioritizing the startup is hard, right? Like
Yes.
there's a few other things we need to do.
Yes.
But no, it makes sense. I mean, if you're focusing just on technology, you're not focusing on customers, then that's not the best thing to do, I think. It sounds like you're making the right decision. So hopefully we'll have you back soon and you can tell us
Sure.
how the iPhone SDKs worked out and,
Yes.
and what apps you're kind of integrating in. So that's great. Thank you for your time. This was Entrepreneurs in Small Rooms Drinking Coffee with Jacob of Cumulonimbus, better known as PressureNet.
Yeah.
Check them out on the web. Thank you for the working group for hosting us and for Nick Kuhn for producing the show. And tune in next week, 8 a.m. Thursday morning Eastern Time for the next episode. Thanks very much, everybody.